I knew something was wrong the second her phone lit up on the kitchen counter. We'd been engaged for 3 weeks. Wedding invitations were stacked neatly in the study, our names printed in gold. But that night, while she was in the shower, the screen flashed with a preview. "Can't stop thinking about last night. When's round two?" The sender wasn't a stranger. It was my best friend Ryan. For a moment, I just stared at the words, feeling my pulse climb. I opened the thread. Dozens of messages, photos, and voice notes. I read enough to know they'd been meeting for months. In my apartment, in his car, in hotel rooms I'd paid for when we travelled. She'd told him things she'd never told me. My hands didn't shake. My breath didn't hitch. I just felt something switch off inside me. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't rage. It was the absolute clarity that comes when you realize someone you'd trust with your life has been digging your grave. I didn't confront her that night, or the next. I played along, breakfast together, planning the seating chart, small kisses on the way out the door. Every detail of our lives continued as if nothing had changed. But in the background, I began collecting screenshots, audio recordings, bank statements showing where my money had gone. 2 weeks later, I found myself at a bar downtown, sitting across from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, a journalist named Cole Matthews. We'd gone to high school together. Now he ran an online column that specialized in stories about betrayal and corruption. I slid my phone across the table. He didn't say much, just kept scrolling, eyebrows knitting tighter with every swipe. When he finally looked up, his voice was low. "Do you want revenge or justice?" "Both," I said, "but in the right order." The plan started forming in my head like a blueprint. Her bachelorette party was in a month. Ryan was the one organizing the surprise bachelor party for me. What they didn't know was that I'd already spoken to the venue manager. Every corner of that place would have hidden cameras. Every microphone would be live. In the meantime, I had to keep my mask in place. That meant dinners with her parents, fake arguments about wedding cake flavors, even standing beside Ryan at a charity event as if he wasn't the man sleeping with my fiancé. Every second of it was a test of control. The real test came one Friday night. She was out with friends. Ryan texted me by accident, or maybe he thought he was texting her, a photo of a hotel room bed. I didn't reply. I just saved it, dropped it into the growing folder on my desktop labeled "When They Deny It." My apartment became a quiet war room. I stayed up past midnight, building timelines, cross-referencing phone GPS logs with credit card charges. I didn't need speculation. I needed irrefutable proof. I wasn't going to give them the chance to twist the story, to call me insecure or jealous. The pressure built in silence. Every morning, I woke next to her, knowing exactly what she'd done hours before. Every conversation with Ryan was a performance. But underneath, the current of anger was becoming something sharper, more deliberate. One night, I dreamed I confronted them in front of everyone we knew. Her parents, his co-workers, the guests at our wedding. In the dream, I didn't shout. I just pressed play on a recording and let the truth fill the room. People turned, faces changed, and they couldn't escape it. When I woke up, I knew exactly how this was going to end. Not with me screaming, not with me breaking things, but with them standing in a crowd, hearing their own voices betray them. I started carrying a small flash drive everywhere I went. Inside, it was everything. The texts, the photos, the GPS data, the bank records. I didn't know yet which moment I'd use it, but I knew that when it came, they wouldn't see it coming. The night before her bachelorette party, I sat on my balcony, looking out over the city lights. My phone buzzed, a new message from Ryan. "Hope tomorrow's big speech is ready, man. You're up first." I typed one sentence back. "It's ready." And it was. The bachelorette and bachelor parties were scheduled for the same night. Her group booked a rooftop club across town. Mine, according to Ryan, would be a private room at a high-end lounge. Just the guys, no drama. I arrived early. The venue manager, a stocky man named Darren, greeted me with a short nod. "Everything's set," he said. "Audio, video, all feeds live to the control room." I handed him the flash drive. "When I give the signal, you'll know what to play." He didn't ask questions. By 9, the room was full. Ryan worked the crowd, laughing, slapping shoulders. He handed me a drink and clinked his glass to mine. "To the last night of freedom," he said. I took a sip and smiled like I believed him. An hour in, the bait was set. I stepped outside, pretending to take a call. Ryan followed a few minutes later, thinking I couldn't hear him on the phone. "She thinks I'm with him all night," he said, voice low but clear. "Yeah, I'll swing by your place after this." I didn't react, just leaned against the railing, waiting until he walked back inside. When I returned, I gave Darren the signal. The lights dimmed slightly. The big screen at the end of the room flickered on. At first, the guys thought it was a slideshow or some prank video. Then Ryan's voice filled the room. "Last night was insane. She's got no idea." Laughter stopped. Heads turned. The next clip rolled, texts between him and my fiancé, each timestamp matching nights she told me she was working late. Then came photos. Then a voice note of her saying she'd marry me just to keep the family happy while planning weekends with him. Ryan froze. He tried to grab the remote from Darren, but 2 of the guys stepped in. Nobody touched him, but the space between him and the door suddenly closed. The feed ran for 5 solid minutes, no music, no commentary, just them, in their own words. When it ended, I stepped forward. My voice didn't rise. "That's my best man and my fiancé. This is who they've been while smiling in my face." No one spoke. A couple of the guys left without looking at him. Ryan tried to stammer out something about editing and context, but every person in that room had just seen the truth raw. I left before he could finish. Outside, the air was cooler, cleaner. My phone buzzed, a message from Cole, the journalist. "Got the files, publishing tonight." By the time I got home, her name was trending on local feeds. The article was short but brutal, a timeline of their affair, supported by proof neither of them could deny. Screenshots, dates, the recording from the party. Cole didn't editorialize, he didn't have to. The evidence spoke for itself. An hour later she called. I let it ring out. Then Ryan tried, then her mother. I didn't answer any of them. I wasn't interested in explanations that came only after the mask had been ripped away. The next morning, my apartment was quiet. No flowers from her, no apology letters. Just silence and the occasional buzz of my phone. The wedding venue emailed to confirm the cancellation, noting that the deposit was non-refundable. I wired the balance without hesitation. The money was nothing compared to the cost of staying. Ryan was dropped from 2 projects at his firm by noon. She locked her social accounts by evening. Mutual friends started texting me versions of the same thing. "Didn't know, sorry man." That night, I met Cole at the same bar. He didn't congratulate me. He didn't need to. He just asked one question. Was it worth it? I thought about it for a long moment. It wasn't about worth. It was about making sure I wasn't the only one who knew. As I walked home, I passed the street where Ryan's car used to be parked outside my building. Empty now. For the first time in months, my chest felt light. They had counted on my silence. They'd mistaken patience for weakness. They wouldn't make that mistake again. The days after the reveal felt unreal. My phone stayed on silent, but the messages poured in. Some from people I hadn't spoken to in years, some from complete strangers who'd read Cole's article. They all wanted to know the same thing. What was I going to do now? The answer was simple: move forward. Ryan tried to control the fallout. He posted a long statement online about private matters and fabricated content. But when Cole dropped the unedited audio from the party, any doubt evaporated. His business reputation was finished. The firm officially announced his resignation 3 days later. She didn't speak publicly at all, But I heard from a mutual friend that she'd lost her job at a local marketing agency after clients complained. Apparently, the company didn't want their family values brand ambassador trending for the wrong reasons. I didn't celebrate. Watching their lives crumble didn't bring the satisfaction I thought it might. It was just confirmation that actions have weight, and sometimes that weight lands exactly where it should. In quieter moments, I asked myself if I'd gone too far. Then I'd remember the months of deception, the way they smiled in my face while planning their next move behind my back. If I'd stayed silent, they'd still be doing it. They'd still be laughing about it, and I'd still be the fool in the story. 2 weeks later, I met Cole again. He'd brought a printed copy of the article, something about archiving the moment. He slid it across the table. "You closed a chapter," he said. "Feels more like I burned the whole book," I replied. "Sometimes that's the only way to stop the story from repeating." I left the bar without looking back. The city felt different, not brighter, not softer, just clearer. Every street I walked down, I wasn't carrying the weight of what I couldn't prove anymore. The invitations were still in a box in my closet. One night, I pulled them out, fed them into the shredder, and watched the gold lettering disappear into strips. Not out of spite, but because they no longer represented anything real. I started spending my evenings differently. Gym sessions turned into long runs. Runs turned into small trips out of town. I went to places I'd never bothered with before, just to see something new. Each step away from that life made it easier to breathe. The only time I heard from her directly was in a short email. It had no greeting, no subject line, just one sentence. "You didn't have to humiliate me like that." I didn't reply, because she still didn't understand I hadn't humiliated her. She'd done that herself. I'd just stopped hiding it for her. Months passed. Cole's article eventually slipped off the front pages, replaced by newer scandals. People stopped whispering when I walked into a room. And one morning, I realized I'd gone an entire week without thinking about either of them. That felt like the real win. I don't pretend there's a perfect way to handle betrayal. Some people walk away quietly, some burn the bridge. I did both. I left, but I made sure the bridge couldn't be rebuilt. If there's anything I took from it, it's this. Silence can protect you, but it can also protect the wrong people. And when someone's built their entire image on lies, the truth isn't cruelty, it's balance. The night of the bachelor party, I'd told Ryan the speech was ready. In the end, the speech wasn't words, it was proof. And proof speaks in a language no one can talk over. That was the last time I saw either of them, and I plan to keep it that way. 6 months later, the noise had faded. The people who'd once been eager to dissect every detail had moved on to fresher gossip. Cole's article still lived online, but it was now buried under layers of unrelated headlines. I'd built a life that didn't have their shadows in it. Most days, I didn't think about them, but betrayal leaves its fingerprints. It changes how you read people's pauses, the way you notice shifts in their tone. Trust became something I handed out in small, deliberate pieces. One Thursday, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something made me pick up. "This is Detective Morales," the voice said. "Are you familiar with Ryan Porter?" "Yes," I answered, careful not to let my voice give anything away. "He's under investigation for fraud. We found your name in some of his communications. Can you come in to answer a few questions?" The meeting was short. They already had what they needed: bank transfers, falsified contracts, messages that tied him to a client scam. My connection was only that he'd used my name as a reference without asking. Morales assured me I wasn't a suspect. As I left the station, I wondered if Ryan even remembered doing that. For him, people were always pieces to move around, resources to burn. What we'd lived through wasn't a one-time lapse, it was who he was. 2 weeks later, a former mutual friend messaged me. Ryan had been charged, his bail was set high, and he'd lost his apartment. I didn't reply. I didn't care enough to feel anything about it. Then, out of nowhere, She appeared. I was coming out of a grocery store when I heard my name. She was standing by the crosswalk, looking smaller somehow. "I'm not here to start a fight," she said quickly. I wanted you to know I left him right after that night." I kept my hands in my pockets. "You think that changes anything?" "No," she admitted. "But I think about what you did, how you did it. I'm still angry, but I get it now." There was a time I might have wanted to hear that. Not anymore. "I didn't do it for you to understand," I said. She nodded once, almost like she'd expected that answer, and crossed the street without another word. That night, I thought about the exchange, not because it stirred anything for her, but because it reminded me that revenge, no matter how precise, doesn't tie everything up neatly. People carry their own endings. You don't get to write all of them. A month later, Cole reached out again. He wanted to know if I'd go on record for a follow-up piece about life after exposure. "No headlines this time," I told him. "If I'm moving on, I'm moving all the way on." He respected that. The final loose thread came in the form of a plain envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a short note. "You were right about him. I should have listened. M." I didn't recognize the handwriting. Maybe it was one of the people Ryan had burned after me. Maybe it was just someone who'd watched from the sidelines. I didn't keep it. I read it once, then dropped it into the shredder with the last of the wedding bills I'd finally closed out. The life I had before all of this was gone, and I didn't want it back. I didn't need a new version of it either. I wanted something that didn't have to be measured against the past at all. And that's where I left it. No lingering conversations, no second acts. Just the quiet certainty that whatever they told themselves about me now, I was no longer part of their story. I thought the story was finished until a message landed in my inbox with the subject line, "Need help, not gossip." It was from a guy named Jamie. He'd read Cole's article months ago, saved it, and now his life looked too similar. He didn't want sympathy, he wanted a roadmap. We met at a public library because it felt neutral. He came with a small notebook and a phone that wouldn't stop lighting up. He didn't waste time. "My girlfriend says I'm paranoid. My business partner says I'm stressed. I think they're both lying." "Okay," I said. "Tell me what you know, not what you fear." He listed missed calls, location pings that didn't match, expenses routed through a company card, stories that shifted when he asked simple questions. I heard the same pattern I'd lived through: deny, deflect, delay. "I want to blow it up tonight," he said. "Corner them both and make it ugly." "That will make you feel powerful for 5 minutes," I said. "Then you'll have chaos and no proof." "So what do I do?" "You plan, you verify, you protect yourself first." I gave him the checklist I wish someone had handed me. Duplicate your financial records. Change two-factor authentication on every account that's yours. Pull cell logs and cross-check dates with charges. Record only where it's legal and never bait people into crimes. Tell one person you trust where you'll be when you meet anyone involved. Decide in advance how this ends for you. Break up, legal action, public truth, or quiet exit. Pick one, don't mix them in panic. He wrote fast. "What about revenge?" "Revenge is a byproduct," I said. "Justice is a decision. Make the decision first." Over the next week, he sent me updates, short, factual, no rants. He found hotel receipts. He exported messages from a shared project management app that his partner thought no one checked. He didn't confront, he documented. He asked a lawyer about the company card, learned exactly what counted as misuse and what evidence would hold up. Then he hit the wall I knew was coming. "She cried when I pulled away," he texted. "Said I'm abandoning her in a hard week." "Hold your line," I replied. "Facts over performance." 2 days later, he asked me to come to a meeting with his lawyer and accountant. I said yes, but sat in the back and kept quiet. They reviewed the numbers. The accountant's face changed when he saw a set of transfers hidden under a vendor code. The lawyer circled dates and nodded once. It wasn't speculation anymore. Jamie chose the controlled route. No public posts, no spectacle. He scheduled 2 meetings an hour apart, first with his partner, then with his girlfriend, each with a witness present and a written summary prepared in advance. He kept the door open, his phone recording on the table in plain sight, and read the facts without adjectives. The partner folded fast, offered excuses, then a repayment plan that the lawyer rejected on the spot. The girlfriend tried to pivot to pain, said she'd been unhappy for months, said it wasn't what it looked like. Jamie didn't argue. He handed her a simple statement ending the relationship and asked for his key. She left without it. He called me that night. No victory yell, just steady breathing. "I didn't shout," he said. "I didn't break anything." "You didn't have to," I said. "You ended it." Weeks passed. Jamie's partner resigned under a formal agreement that protected the company and repaid damages with interest. The girlfriend moved out within the month. There were no viral threads, no headlines. That was his choice, and it was the right one for him. He asked me to speak, unofficially, on a panel at a local community centre about boundaries and documentation. I didn't want a stage, but I agreed to sit on a plain chair and answer direct questions. The room filled with people who looked tired in the way that doesn't show on a mirror. I told them what I'd learned the hard way. Don't confront until you're ready to leave if the truth is confirmed. Keep your proof clean and legal. Protect your accounts before you protect your pride. Pick a finish line: safety, separation, legal remedy, or disclosure. Cross it on purpose. After the panel, a man in his 50s stopped me at the door. "I stayed quiet for 20 years, he said. "Hearing you say I'm not weak for leaving late, that mattered." I shook his hand and didn't try to fix anything else for him. People need truth and the space to use it. On the ride home, I realized my life wasn't defined by what had been done to me anymore. It was defined by the choices I kept making afterward: to verify, not assume, to close, not linger, to help, not relive. The last piece fell into place when I got a letter from the court. I was listed as a reference witness in Ryan's fraud case, not for character, just for timeline verification. I answered what was asked, nothing extra. Months later, a public record showed a conviction and restitution. I didn't bookmark it. One night, Jamie texted a photo of his empty desk at the old office, then another of a small lease for a new workspace signed with his name alone. "Not starting over," he wrote, "just starting right." I stared at the message longer than I expected. That was the ending I wanted for anyone who asked me for help. Not a spectacle, not a scar that runs the show, just a clean decision with daylight on it. People think closure is a moment. It isn't. It's a practice. You apply it every time you pick clarity over chaos. I don't wake up grateful for what happened. I wake up grateful that I learned how to end things with proof and walk away without turning back. That's the last word. A year after the night everything came apart, I thought I'd finally reached the point where the past had stopped following me. Then Cole called. "I've been contacted by a documentary team," he said. "They want to include your story in a series on trust and deception. They've already got the legal clearance." I told him no, not because I was afraid, but because I'd built a life that didn't have their names in it, and I intended to keep it that way. Cole didn't push. Before hanging up, he said, "Sometimes the most powerful part of a story is knowing when it doesn't need to be told again." A week later, the past tested my resolve in another way. I was at a conference for small business owners, sitting through a panel on digital security, when I saw a familiar name on the attendee list: Ryan. I didn't see him in the crowd, but I felt the shift in my focus. Old reflexes kicked in. When the panel ended, I headed for the exit and nearly ran into him in the hallway. He looked thinner, older, but still carried himself like the rules didn't apply. "Ethan," he said, like nothing had ever happened. "We should talk." "There's nothing to talk about," I replied. "I've changed," he said quickly. "I've been through..." You've been through consequences, I cut in. That's not the same thing. He tried to steer the conversation toward starting fresh and putting the past behind us. I stopped him. I don't hold grudges, I said, but I don't repeat mistakes. His mouth tightened. So you're just going to walk away? Yes, I said. And I did. Walking away wasn't about winning. It was about refusing to give the past any leverage over the present. By the time I reached the parking lot, I realized my pulse hadn't even changed. That was the clearest sign I was done. A month later, I was invited to guest lecture at a local college business ethics class. The professor had read about my situation and wanted me to speak on decision-making under pressure. I agreed on one condition: no names, no direct references, just lessons. The students didn't need the full drama, they needed the framework. Identify your core value, gather verifiable facts, decide on an outcome before the emotion hits its peak. Act in a way you can defend a year later. One student asked, "What if you get the chance to take back control over the person who wronged you?" "You don't take it back," I said. "You take yourself out of their reach. That's the real control." After class, the professor thanked me and said something I'd never heard before. "You've turned it from a story about revenge into a story about strategy." That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the last box I hadn't unpacked since moving. Inside was the flash drive, the one that had carried every piece of evidence. I held it for a long time, then plugged it in one last time. Every file opened instantly, just as sharp as the day I'd saved it. I deleted them all, not because I forgave anyone, but because I no longer needed proof to justify my decisions. The truth had already done its work. The next morning, I dropped the empty drive in a recycling bin. There was no backup, no hidden copy. For the first time, there was no temptation to revisit, replay, or reframe the events. It was over in action, not just in theory. Months passed without a single ripple from that part of my life. Work grew, my network expanded, and my days filled with projects that had nothing to do with betrayal. I realized the absence of drama wasn't boring, it was progress. One evening, Jamie called. "You were right," he said. "It's not about payback, it's about not letting it happen twice." I didn't answer right away. I just let that sentence settle, because it was the truth I'd been working toward without even knowing it. You don't return to the fire you've already walked out of. You don't revisit the wreck just to prove you survived it. You build something new, far enough away that the smoke can't reach you. And once you've done that, there's no return. 5 years had passed since I walked away from that life. Not a week, not a season, years. Enough time for the noise to fade so completely that sometimes I wondered if it had happened to someone else. My business had grown beyond what I'd imagined. What started as a small consultancy now operated in multiple states. I'd built a team I trusted, carefully, deliberately. Not once in those years had I ignored a red flag, no matter how small. The people who knew my history didn't bring it up. New colleagues and clients had no idea unless they stumbled across old articles. And if they did, they never asked. That was the best sign of all. My present was stronger than my past. One afternoon, while speaking at a leadership seminar in Denver, a young manager approached me during the break. She said she'd heard me on a podcast where I discussed decision-making under betrayal without naming names. "You talked about acting with proof, not emotion," she said. "I used that when my partner tried to cut me out of my own project. It saved me from a legal mess." She didn't owe me that story, but it stayed with me. It was proof the lessons had value beyond my own survival. Back home, I kept a steady rhythm: work, travel, time with a small circle of friends who'd proven themselves over years. Trust wasn't a wall anymore, it was a gate I could open and close without hesitation. Then one day, out of nowhere, I got a message from Cole. "Thought you'd want to know. Ryan took a plea deal. No jail time but restitution for multiple victims. One of them sent me this note and asked me to pass it on. The note was short. You told the truth when no one else would. It made me check my own life. Thank you. No signature. I didn't need one. Whoever wrote it had found their own way out, and that was enough. I didn't reply to Cole right away. Instead, I sat on my porch and thought about the path between then and now. The moments that could have gone wrong if I'd acted too soon, or too loud, or without proof. The moments that could have chained me to the past instead of cutting me free. Life wasn't perfect. Nothing is. But it was mine. Entirely mine. The people in it were there because they chose to be, and because I chose them back. The final test came without warning. At a charity gala, I saw her across the room. No Ryan, no crowd around her. Just her, scanning the venue until her eyes met mine. For a moment, I thought she might walk over. She didn't. She gave the smallest nod, not of apology, not of recognition, just acknowledgement. Then she turned away. And that was it. No conversation, no second chapter. Just a moment that confirmed what I already knew. Some stories close for good, and staying out of them is the clearest victory you can claim. I left the event early, not because of her, but because I had an early flight the next morning to meet a new client. Work I cared about, people I respected. That's where my energy went now. Before bed, I wrote down something I'd never said out loud. You don't erase the past by forgetting it. You erase its control by building something better in its place. I closed the notebook, set it on the desk, and turned off the light. Whatever tomorrow brought, it wouldn't be shaped by what happened 5 years ago. That part of my life was over, not in theory, but in practice. And this time, there truly was no looking back.